Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. This is part 2 of a 2-part show with 1984 North Country graduate and entertainer, Tim Kavanagh. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Feels like I was just here.
Yeah. And
I think I'm wearing the same outfit I wore last week.
Yeah, so am I. The last part of the show, we talked about everything from you being a rising star in the principal's office at Hillside Elementary, getting sent there to go see Mr. Ledoux, but then you've risen up to being in the Simpsons movie, Beetlejuice. But I think you were saying that your least appreciative audience was Mr. Ledoux in the principal's office when you were trying to entertain him.
Yeah, it was like, it was cold in there, man. Like I could throw anything at one of his walls and nothing was sticking whatsoever. And I don't know if you remember, but and maybe it was certain students had this ability to do this with Mr. Ledoux, but his face would go from a normal color to a red, to a bright red, to an almost purple when he was getting frustrated and angered and stuff like that. And I just remembered, I'm like, okay, so I'm getting a reaction of some sort. It's not what I'm used to and what I like, but I am getting a reaction.
Hey, here's a question though.
Yeah.
Is we talked about as I said, your classroom theater all the way up to the Simpsons movie. Did your parents appreciate your theater at home when they were trying to get you to do something?
Yes and no. I think that there were times where they appreciated it and thought it was funny, and then there was just times where it was not the right place or right time, or maybe inappropriate to be joking about things. I can recall other situations, specifically in high school. Oh, good Lord, I'll never forget this. We're down in the student lounge, and you remember we had a great student lounge. I'm sure it's still there, but
no smoking lounge anymore, though.
Oh boy. I know. You know your age when your high school had a smoking lounge, right? And a maternity ward. No. And so I just remember, and ours was great, right? Like, we had picnic tables inside. We had all the trophies on display. We had piped in music. I think it was always Shom FM out of Montreal. Yeah. And, and so it was just a great place to hang out. And I just remember, we're just hanging out there with a bunch of friends and laughing and goofing off and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, Tim Kavanagh, please report to the principal's office. Tim Kavanagh to the principal's office. And I'm like, whoa, here we go again. I couldn't figure out what I did. I'm trying to recall the whole day. I'm like, all right, why am I getting called in? All right. So I go down there, and I walk into the office. Remember, there was an outer office area where all the secretaries were and everything. And when you know them all by name, it's probably not a good sign. So I'm waving to them and saying hi and stuff like that. And they're trying to be cordial to me, but they're also had this look on their face like something just isn't right. And so then Mr. Landrosh came out, the assistant principal, which I've got a funny story about him later in life. And he came out and he said, Tim, why don't you come on in here? And he was pointing to Noel Ford's office, the principal. And I'm like, okay. So I go in and I go into Noel Ford's office, and there in a circle in his office is every one of my teachers seated. And at the top of the circle is Noel Ford, and at the bottom of the circle are my parents and an empty chair in between them, which I had to take. And basically, it was our senior year. I literally wasn't doing any work. My focus was to make people laugh. I saw no, I didn't really have any other purpose, I thought, at that point, than to make people laugh. And I remember specifically Mr. Ford, like, starting off the meeting, he goes, I want to thank everyone for coming in here today. We're going to talk about, the topic, and that is that we're all gathered here and we're all very concerned that the spirit of the class of 1984 is not going to graduate with the class of 1984. And my mother says it best. She goes, Tim went from his jovial, smiley, rosy cheeked self to this gray ash, like no expression on his face whatsoever. And I knew I was in trouble. So I had like a half a year to turn things around. And honestly, like, I'm thinking, listen, this is kind of like a 50-50 chance here. Yeah, they can hold me back, but do they really want me here another year? I don't think they want to keep me here. Like, I think they're going to move me on anyway. Yeah. So do I really have to do any work, or can I get by on the slide?
And so you graduated and you went off to college, and then I know at what point did you, I ran into you a few times, or a couple times, because I'd go on WCAX every once in a while on the news on, maybe Across the Fence. And you were there as I think you were an ad salesman.
Yeah, that's correct,
weren't you? So you've done a lot. You've done everything in the entertainment fields. You slept, you've got out there, you've sold ads to provide entertainment. But does this all weave in? Like, do you think you entertaining for Mr. Ledoux to selling ads for WCAX? Do you think that's really, and being on the stage in the high school, do you think that really provided a really well-rounded you for who you are today in the
I think
world?
The experiences, over the years, and what I was able to, what I learned out of it was all valuable and all a part of it. There's, we've talked about the stage performances and stuff like that, but there's so many different things that I've been involved in from an entertainment standpoint. I talked about DJing and, I was a wedding DJ, I was a radio DJ, I was a TV host, I was, all of these different things, and all of it was part of the big full mix of it. And, and I'm lucky because that TV show really became a launching pad for me in a number of different ways. It landed me the Simpsons event. It also provided me with additional revenue because now I'm a celebrity, I guess you could say. And so my clients loved me. I mean, I had a great relationship with them anyways, but like I was increasing my sales like crazy. So I remember that I was either the second or the third person in the history of Channel 3 to book over $1 million in 1 year. And that was right after the start of my TV show, because it was just like, I was selling my show. I'm like, hey, why don't you buy a commercial space in my show? Or do you want to be a sponsor of my show? And this is what it would cost. And we just need, what do you have for product that you want to give away? Or, things like that. So it was all part of it. And I think the biggest takeaway, or one of the biggest takeaways, was the fact that one of the guests that I had on my TV show had some Vermont roots. And those Vermont roots are that he grew up in Middlebury. His father was the first conductor of the Vermont Symphony Orchestra, conductor Gigi. And his son, who I had on my show, Martin Gigi, he did a movie in Burlington, Vermont back in 1999. And I remember when they were looking for extras for it, and I thought, oh my God, like this is something I've always wanted to do, was be in a film. So I auditioned for it, and I got the part of an extra, and it filmed right in South Burlington. And I was in, I always screw up the title of this film. Actually, I think I've got it right here. I can pull it up as we're talking. But my ex best girlfriend's wedding, something like that. I don't know. And it starred Debbie Gibson. Now, Debbie Gibson back in the day when we were growing up was, the mall pop star, And so I'm thinking, wow, okay, Debbie Gibson's in it. But also one of my favorite entertainers was in it, who was a Vermont resident, and that was Dom DeLuise. And I thought, oh my God, like to be in a film with them. Well, there was also a number of other crazy, zany people that were in it. John Fishman, the drummer from Phish, was in it. And there was a gentleman who at the time was the mayor of Burlington was in it. And he goes by the name of Bernie Sanders. And his part, oh my God, his part, he played Rabbi Manny Shovitz. was his name in the film. And so I was in the film and had a great experience and got to know Martine, and we stayed in contact over the years. And it was I was fast forward to when I'm doing my TV show, and Martine's out in LA now doing movies on a bigger scale. And he calls me up and he says, hey, I'm coming to New York to promote a film. I go, but I want to make a pit stop in Vermont, see some friends and family, and maybe do a couple of, things, show the film there. Would you happen to have room for me on your TV show? And I said, absolutely. So we ended up doing like this. We ended up doing 2 episodes with him. We did the first one with Courtney Gaines, who was the star of the film. And Courtney's done a number of different things, but the role that I think he will always be remembered as was Malachi from Children of the Corn, Stephen King's Children of the Corn. And actually I was in later in life, or a few years down the road from that, I was in a film with him, which was a great honor. And then the band played. That was because part of the movie was this traveling band that he was associated with. And then Martine was on my guest for the next week, because we would actually tape 2 shows in a row, because we'd have the studio audience, we'd tape back to back. And so Martine was my guest, and we had a great time, and we talked, and we were talking about what was coming up next. And he was talking about a script he'd been working on called Sweetwater, which was the story of the first African-American to be drafted into the NBA in 1950. And so that they were looking at funding there, that was probably going to be the next project. And during commercial breaks, and you'll remember this, you're in commercial breaks, so we're just chit-chatting and stuff like that. And he says to me, he goes, hey, could I send you the script? I'd love to get your feedback on it. And I'm like, you want to send me the script? I go, I'd love to read it. So he sends it to me, like a week later, he sends it to me. And I read it, and I gave him a call, and we had a talk about it and everything. And he said, unfortunately, the funding fell through, but that happens, and we'll get there eventually to make this film. And he said, listen, he goes, if I ever make this film, I kind of see you as the lead reporter for the Madison Square Garden press conference. And so I said, all right, Martine, you ever make this film, I'm your guy. And I don't think we've talked about this. So fast forward another 15 years from that time, I get a phone call the day before my birthday, the voice message from Martine saying, hey, I need you to give me a call back when you can. So I call him back and he goes, you're never going to believe what we just started production on. And I said, Martine, you're absolutely right. I have no idea what you're starting up with. He goes, you remember the basketball script we talked about years ago? And I said, yeah, I do. He goes, well, we're at Warner Brothers Studio in Burbank. Today is day one of production. We are shooting it. We've got Carrie Elways and Jeremy Piven and Richard Dreyfuss and, all these other stars in it. And I'm like, oh my God, Martine, congratulations. Like, I know that this one's been, and we talked through the years. I go, I know that this one's like close to your heart. Like, you've been working hard on this one. And then he says to me, he goes, do you remember that part I promised you 15 years ago? And I said, the reporter? And he goes, yeah. And I go, yeah, I remember that. And he goes, it's yours if you want it. And I'm like, oh my God. So they flew me out to LA.
That was recently,
yeah, because it came out, when did it come out? 23, was it 23 or 24 it came out? What year are we now? We're 25, right?
25. But we are not 25.
Yeah, times 2.
25.
And then some. So yeah, it came out, I guess 24. Yeah, yes, because I had 2 films come out in the same, 2 blockbuster films come out in the same year, which is so crazy, right? So in April, Sweetwater debuted in 2,000 theaters across the country. And then in September, Sweetwater debuted and came out and to like something like 5,000 theaters across the country. But it was such an amazing experience and such a dream come true for me, Scott, because I thought, and I'd been involved in a lot of independent films and appreciated every single one of them. And in fact, this Saturday, we're going to go and see Farm Boy again, which is one of George Woodard's films. And I play a small role in that. And we filmed that. Oh my God. I want to say that was probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago and everything. And I just saw George right before the holidays and we got to reminiscing and talking and everything. And he's such a great character. And, so I've been involved in all these things, but to be involved in something on that scale was unreal. And I've done some national TV shows in the past, so I was kind of used to the production side of stuff just being massive. And this was massive. And the thing that, people always ask me, like, what is it that you like most? Is it being in the film, seeing yourself in the film, hearing what people's reactions were to the film? And I said, my favorite part is actually working the scenes in the film is my favorite part, because you've got me and other actors, and then you've got producers and you've got directors and you've got like carpenters and makeup artists and hair people. Well, I don't have hair people. And all of these people, like, you're talking hundreds of people that are surrounding you while you're doing your scene, and they're all working on the same exact thing. And it creates this community, and there's no feeling that I've ever felt than that, and it was the same thing with Beetlejuice. Here I am on the set with Tim Burton and Winona Ryder and Justin Theroux and Jenna Ortega, and one of my personal favorites, Catherine O'Hara. And I'm thinking, oh my God. And everyone's doing, like I just said, everyone's just driving towards that same goal. And it's all being led by the director and saying, here's what I need, here's what I need, here's what we're working towards, and stuff like that. And it's just like this, it's magic. It's a magical moment. It's really cool.
Okay, we only have about 10 minutes left,
Woo!
believe it or not. Hey, I got a question about actors and such. Did you ever meet Donald Sutherland, who was a fairly regular fixture around Newport until I believe that he passed away this last year. So had you
I
met
got
him?
one opportunity to meet him, and I was definitely starstruck by it, but for 3 reasons. I was working at the marina in Newport. That's where I worked most of my through most of my high school. Loved it. My first vehicle was a boat, you know, because we lived on the water. So I would wake up in the morning, push the boat out, drive to work. Then we drive to Canada and get beer and come back. But that's another story. Anyways, I remember one day he would frequent. It was called the Landing back then. It's now the East Side Restaurant.
Right.
And from what I understand, he had his mail sent there because he lived in Georgeville, Quebec. And so he would often have mail pickups, his mail picked up at the Landing. And one day, all of a sudden, this cool looking speedboat is making its way over towards the marina, and they pull up to get some gas. And I didn't really notice at first, but I just remember the silver white hair. And then I'm looking at him, and then I'm looking in the boat, and there's this blonde haired guy. I didn't really recognize him, but then there was this beautiful woman. And that's when Kiefer Sutherland was dating Julia Roberts. And she was there. So it's the 3 of them in this boat. And I'm just like, oh my God. So that was my only interaction ever with him. You know, we tried to get him on the show. It was tough to coordinate. There was a few local actors that I really wanted on my show. I would have loved Bob Keachum, Captain Kangaroo. Would have loved Dom DeLuise. You know, M. Emmett Walsh, who lived up in Swanton. But I got stuck with Luis Guzman instead.
Yeah. Wait, wasn't I gotta go back in time here. I know I was at J Peak with Luis Guzman. You were there. Were we doing something with you at J Peak?
Yeah. That's when I was in radio.
Because
we were doing a live we were doing a live feed from the water park, and
I couldn't get Louise to go down Lachute. Yeah, I don't know if after I left whether he finally sucked it up and went down, but I tried to get him to go down the loop to loop.
I don't think he ever did the loop to loop, but we had a great time splashing in that water park up at J Peak that day, and it was fun. You know, I asked him if he'd come over, and then I worked with Steve Wright and his team, you know, to bring them in. They had hired us. You know, I was working for the radio station. They had hired us to come in and do a live remote from there, and we did. And they had to open up early because, you know, we were on the morning, you know, starting at 5 a.m. Well, the water park doesn't open until 10, so they had to do a special opening for us that day. And I just remember when we first got there, like, it was so quiet in there. It's like, you know, kind of like when you're sailing, right? You're just harnessed by the wind. You don't hear anything but natural sounds and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden the motors all kick on and it's pushing how many pounds of water through, and all of a sudden just like the noise level just kept rising and rising, and our producer's kind of like, I got to make some adjustments here, like I should have prepared better for this, but like he kept having to adjust volumes and stuff like that.
Okay, we only have about 5 minutes left. So in a nutshell, what do you got planned for the future?
Well, great question. I've got a couple of opportunities that have presented themselves that will be taking place here in the beginning parts of the year. The first thing is I've been working on writing a screenplay, something that I've had in my mind for a number of years, and I've written notes and typed pages of it and stuff like that. And so now I'm really focused on getting that completed. Anyone who I've told the storyline to, and I'm happy to share it with you, they're just like, oh my God, like what a great concept. Like what an absolutely fantastic concept. And so you just kind of have to, the teaser I'll leave you with that is think Goonies and National Treasure meet. So it's along those lines. But when I was shooting Sweetwater, we had a glitch in the scene that I'm in, and I have a speaking part in Sweetwater, and we had a glitch, and in that glitch, we're going through the scene, we're blocking through it and all that stuff, and then the director says, "Okay, let's do some rehearsals on it." And they were rolling camera, and so we did it, and it felt clunky. I'm like, oh my God, that doesn't feel good. And Carrie Elways is sitting across from me with three basketball players, and the director yells, "Cut!" Carrie Elways stands up, walks over to the director. I'm watching this happen, then I'm watching the director and Carrie Elways walking over towards me, and I thought, God, I'm one and done here. They're going to kick my butt back to Vermont. Director says, "Can I see your script?" And I hand it to him. He goes, "Where'd you get this?" And I said, "The production assistant sent it to my hotel room last night." He goes, "You've got the wrong script." I'm like, no wonder it felt so damn clunky. And so they printed out a new script, and then we walked through it, and Carrie, Martine, and I are talking about it and stuff like that. And Martine goes, "You think you got it?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay, let's roll." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, you just gave me the script. Like we're gonna go right now?" And he comes over to me. He goes, "You met Tim earlier, Tim Lee, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Tim Lee is one of Clint Eastwood's producers for El Paso Productions, which is part of the production team for this film. He's like, he's our money counter, and he's counting like every minute. Like every minute counts. So I'm like, "Okay, let's go." And so I did it. And at the end of the scene, Carrie Elways stands up, points to me, and goes, "You, sir, you have done this before." He goes, "Great job." And then Tim came over to me, and he said, "That was fantastic." He goes, "I know Martine explained my role here. You know what my role is here, and you just saved us a bundle." I felt like I was in a Geico commercial. And Martine was so pleased with it and the outcome of the scene itself. And you should watch the film, Scott. It's on Amazon and on Apple TV right now. The scene comes at a pivotal point of the film, and it's just like it's just such a neat scene to be a part of. And Martine was like, "Listen," he goes, "I'm working on a couple other projects, and I want you involved." And so there's one project that's coming up that's called that is a David Zucker film. Now, David Zucker is the director of the Airplane movies, the Naked Gun series, and all that. He's the director of this film, and they've got a part for me in that that we'll shoot sometime early this year out in LA. And then Martine's got a film called, I can't wait for this one. It's called The Big Finish, and it's basically about a retirement home for aging celebrities. And And we're talking about celebrities that are like in their 90s type thing. And so he gives me the script and he says, tell me what part speaks to you. So I read the script, we got back together, and he goes, what part do you want to do? And I said, honestly, nothing spoke to me. Like, am I shooting myself in the head here? Like, nothing spoke to me. And he goes, well, what are you thinking? And I said, well, funny you should ask. I go, I kind of see myself. I mean, there was this one part, and it was one of the orderlies, but he was the protagonist, and I didn't want to be the protagonist in the film. And I said, okay, well, how about this? Like, what about if I'm an orderly? And I think that I'm doing everything for all the right reasons, but really I'm not, and I'm really just kind of screwing everything up. And I'm more of the disorderly orderly. And I gave him a couple scenarios that I had created and thought up of. And he and the producers loved it and have written it in. So there's that.
Okay, well, I hate to tell you, but our time is up. But we've got to have you back on. I know you've been on before many years ago. So when you wrap up your next project, hit me up, and if I'm still around, I'm we're getting up there. People love to, when I tell people I'm middle-aged, they say, well, does that mean you're going to live to like 115, 120? Because to be realistic, we're down the other side.
We're on the backside of Chamberlain Birch for sure.
Oh, yeah. Hey, it was great having you on. Just a wonderful guest. It was super, also reminiscent.
Yeah, I always enjoy my time with you and our conversations, and it's fun always having chit chats with you every now and then on Facebook. So thanks for this opportunity. I think that when I come back on next, we should do it from Three Branches Cafe in Island Pond with our good friend Pierre.
That's true. Our fellow classmate Pierre Gervais, and then we can have fellow 1984 graduate Steve Wheeler bring the maple syrup, and we will be all set.
Sounds perfect.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.